Hey, what's up everybody? Brotrio here, and we already talked in our last video about how good of a year 2020 was for video games. And what is a video game without boss fights? So here we are to talk about our top 10 boss fights in 2020.
Punching in at number 10, we have got Hole Punch. And I know that sounds weird, but Paper Mario Origami King, if you played it, you know how this goes. You fight a bunch of gods, and then a bunch of office supplies. And that's how it works. A Hole Punch.
And somehow those go in together.
Yeah, the office supplies are stronger.
Yeah.
Kind of works for us too, because we typically have an unconventional boss as number 10. And this is a straightforward boss fight, correct?
Yeah.
But it's an unconventional boss because it's a hole puncher.
Yep, so...
But you're paper, so it's scary.
Hole Punch coming in because I thought it was the most fun boss in Paper Mario the Origami King. Now, all the bosses were kind of fun in Paper Mario. That was the only time the combat was super good, was in the boss fights. However, Hole Punch stands above the rest because I thought the mechanics of his boss fight were really cool and rarely got annoying. Now, one thing he can do is Hole Punch Mario up to 3 times, and it takes your health down by a quarter every time. So you gotta get that little section of your head back, or it's gonna hurt you. Hole Punch made it because his mechanics were decent. He didn't mess up the board in an annoying way. He was a really good fight and had a really cool finisher in how to beat him.
Shantae and the 7 Sirens had some pretty unique boss fights. They were just all over the place. Each one had its own just unique feel to it.
And they're all cute girls.
Yeah, but the final boss doesn't start out as a cute girl, at least. She's an old, like, dried up lady.
Ugh.
And
nice.
The Siren Empress. She's been manipulating everything so that she can power herself up to be young and strong again. And when she first starts off, that fight is pretty intense. She's just getting on the walls, throwing stuff, chopping at you all over the place. And then you finally beat her, and she comes back, but she's a giant now. And so you have to scale up these rocks that are floating around her, and then take out her jewelry, which is her weak spots for some reason. And then you get up to the top, and she starts doing head lasers and eye lasers, and she's just shooting all kinds of stuff at you. And thank God Roddy Tops accidentally poisoned her, because who knows how that would have ended for Shantae. Shinsekai Into the Depths had some really cool boss fights. A lot of gigantic fish, a couple of modified drilling equipment, there was some robot fish in there, even a giant squid. But what topped out is the final boss. He's like a giant shrimp-looking thing, the Enac. It's also called the Ineffable Intellect because it's an ultimate being, basically, that
it's a cool-ass title.
People created. And it's basically to try to force human evolution is the reason this thing was made. And it's very, very difficult to get through because it's got this hard shell that you can't even hurt it through. You have to basically trick it into trying to eat you, and then you shoot it in the mouth. And its arms, it's got like some kind of weird like air pouches that it absorbs oxygen through the water.
If it was that smart, it wouldn't open its mouth again after the first shot.
That's true.
It would just wait for you to suffocate and quit giving you bubbles.
Yeah, because you shoot the arms, and that's how you get more air, because otherwise you're going to drown in this fight. And overall, it's a really good fight, but the coolest thing about it is depending on your performance during the boss fight is what ending you get.
In our top 10 games of 2020, we highlighted Kakarot for multiple reasons. The combat is great, and the boss fights are one of the best parts of that combat. There was no fight in the game, in my opinion, better than the final fight with Frieza in Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. It's on Exploding Namek. That already sets the stage in the anime and pretty much any game to be awesome. You're flying through the air, fighting Frieza, then Spirit Bomb, then boom, Krillin's dead. Super Saiyan time. You are kicking the ever-living shit out of Frieza, and it's doing this cool thing that Dragon Ball Z Kakarot did I've never seen anywhere else. when you're Super Saiyan and in your more powered up state, and this goes for any Super Saiyan character, they're doing like, there's after images behind them as you're beating the shit out of people. It's awesome. And you have that for the entire first round of the Frieza fight. Then round 2 kicks in, you don't have that anymore unless you power up the state specifically. That's where the fight gets more even. Frieza's pissed. Frieza's at 100%. Frieza's feeling that shame of being the emperor of the world one day and getting slapped around by an ape the next. It's an awesome fight, and it took like a long time because there's a lot of cutscenes, and it was very faithful to the anime. That was not 5 minutes at all. That was a long, drawn-out slugfest, and it was worth every second. I loved beating down the Emperor of the Universe.
If there's one thing people know about me, it's that I love a good RPG, and a good RPG has a long and rewarding boss fight at the end. And Monster Sanctuary was that game for 2020, because Monster Sanctuary, if you haven't watched our Best Games of 2020 video, is basically Pokemon mixed with Final Fantasy in this awesome mishmash, and it's amazing. But the final boss is Marduk, and then you fight the Mad Lord immediately after him. So it's not even really one boss, it's a gauntlet. So you have to have a keeper duel with Marduk. So the keeper duel, it's 6 on 6, and you gotta defeat all the monsters in their team to beat them. And Marduk ain't playing around, because all his monsters are either light or dark shifted, and 3 of them, 3 are past bosses. So he brings it, and he's got a Mad Eye too that can cast all kinds of debuffs on you, and they aren't weak to debuffs, which is what I do with my Mad Eye. So it was kind of hard to beat him, and then immediately after, you go into fighting the Mad Lord, who is an evolved Mad Eye, still defends against debuffs, so you can't poison him and just like wait for him to run out of like life from the poison or anything, because he's not going to get poisoned that much. And he has awesome magic and physical attack, and fighting one of them right after the other is not easy, and it gets an extra level of difficulty because for the keeper duel 6 on 6, you can pick which 3 you're fighting with. But once you beat him, you are stuck with whatever 3 you defeat Marduk with. So if have that, you can't swap them out for the Mad Lord. Like, you can, but it takes a turn. And it is a hefty level of strategy to know I have to beat Marduk, I have to do it with this team, otherwise I'm going to waste a turn on the Mad Lord and maybe get debuffed and not heal enough, and then they're going to die, and then I'm going to spend forever in the revive cycle trying to get back on my feet. And it was a gauntlet from start to finish, and it took me a while, and the time I finally did it, I think it took me like maybe 45 minutes, and it was that great, awesome, like terrible JRPG feeling of the long gauntlet boss fight. It was the best part of the game to like end on such a cool fight. The best thing a boss fight can do is to push you to your absolute limits and make you bust out every move in your repertoire that you've gained throughout the game. And that is what the Tinkerer does in Spider-Man Miles Morales, because the Tinkerer is not playing around. She thinks what she is doing is completely right and you are in the wrong, and she will stop you at any means necessary. And this is layered in with a whole other layer of drama, because it's your childhood friend / romantic interest maybe, and it's very complex.
Miles it wouldn't Morales, be Spider-Man if you didn't know the villains on a very personal level.
Yeah. I really like how they did the Tinkerer in this, though.
She's very cool and makes all this crazy neon gadgets.
Yeah, and her technology is basically magic, and she can shoot 10-foot-tall saw blades at you.
Imagine
out of her pocket.
She's Iron Man from Avengers Endgame. His armor, what can do in that, she's doing it. Like anything. Programmable matter is bullshit excuse to do whatever the hell they want, and they use every inch of that in this boss fight to great acclaim, because this fight, she's flipping, flopping all over the room, dodging you, She even will dodge some of your Venom strikes and stuff, so you can't just Venom strike her repeatedly like you could with the other bosses. And she's all over the place, throwing saw blades, everything's neon, and it all ends with this crazy, climactic, sacrificial, and redeeming arc that Finn did to thrust Miles into the air because he absorbed a whole new form reactor and was going to explode, but he couldn't get away. So Finn just rips off her glove, jumps up into the air, and takes it like a champ when Miles explodes all this energy into the sky, and Finn is dead, and then Miles cries, and it's very sad.
If there's one thing Ghost of Tsushima taught us that we already know, samurais are cool. And one of the coolest parts of samurais is the duels. Now, you can kind of take almost any duel in Ghost of Tsushima and place it here. Not saying they're exactly the same. They fight differently. But Kojiro almost made it. The reason he did not is because the Tengu had aesthetics and a great reward at the end of it. Now, the Tengu was this guy, he'd been following you around for a while, telling you not to get this bow because the bow is a bunch of demons or whatever. Superstitious nonsense, and Jin was like, nah, I want the bow. So Jin goes to get the bow. Bow got poison on it or something. Jin breathes it in, wakes up to a field of blood surrounded by thousands of crows, and this demon wants to fight him. So you have to sword fight this demon surrounded by 1,000 crows in a blood field, and it was amazing. At the end of this awesome duel, you get the strongest bow in the game. A lot slower than your short bow, but it can pierce armor, and that's exactly what the ghosts need to get all ghosty and stealth around the place.
A 2020 game I'd never got a chance to talk about until now has been Super Meat Boy Forever, because
Took forever to come out.
It did, and then it finally did at the ass end of 2020, but it was a fun game. I enjoyed Super Meat Boy Forever a lot, but the best part about it was the final boss, because it is just these hands that is a god of time and space, because, the squirrel pressed a button, and now time and space is tearing apart, and you get thrown into the future and shit, and you gotta fight the god of time that may actually be Dr. Fetus. So, you're fighting these hands, and it is, oh man, it took me so long. This is so hard, but in actuality, it only takes like 5 minutes, maybe. But it's Meat Boy, so you die constantly.
Well, that's the thing, is it's a stage, it's a maze, and a fight at the same time.
So you gotta dodge the hands attacks, hit them back at the hands. You gotta hit these blocks to make blocks whenever, because the hands can't punch through the blocks. It makes sense in the game, but you gotta keep doing this and keep moving 100% because you can't stop because it's an auto runner. So you gotta keep getting the blocks, keep getting the hands, dodging their attacks, punching the hands, and then jumping up even more stuff to get more blocks, hit more hands, dodge them and stuff, and then you get to this point where you just hit like a bunch of blows into the hands, and then it gets to this weird section that took me forever. It actually is like hold down, I think, but you get this beam of light and you have to aim yourself to shoot somewhere, and you're surrounded by thorns and shit, so you gotta pick the right one. The first one is quick, but you can do it pretty easily. The second one, the second time you shoot in this thing, it is like almost instantly. So you gotta hit like tap down twice, super fast, shoot, and then you're off to the races again. You gotta dodge this hand, jump over spikes, and then you finally get to jump back, put a bunch of blows into this hand, and beat these god hands away from you, and save Nugget, and save the day, and flip off Dr. Fetus, and punch him in the jar or head. I don't know what it is, but you punch Dr. Fetus, and Meat Boy and Bandage Girl finally saved Nugget, and it was awesome.
One of the grossest bosses I think I've ever seen is the Rat King from The Last of Us Part 2. It's just like a mass of flesh you see in a lot of games, but for some reason this one just seemed different because they were all independently moving.
It's like 5 clickers attached to a bloater.
But
it's nasty.
Yeah, and like they're working together, but also they're working against each other.
One of them sloughs off halfway through the fight.
Oh man, and you see like the viscera and the tendons and stuff. It's nasty.
That's hard to watch.
Not to mention, it's not just a bloater either. It's got like shambler like pustules on it too, so it can do the shambler stuff. It can do the bloater stuff. It's got clickers in it, and it lifts off a stalker from its thigh. Fighting the Rat King took every inch of what you had, and if you do it on a higher difficulty where there's not that much ammo around, you just have to dodge this Rat King from fighting and killing you until you can run around, and then you're like, oh, I got two bullets, let me pow pow, we're in the face, oh god, I gotta keep running. And then eventually you find what you think is your saving grace with the flamethrower ammo, and you light its ass up, but really you're just changing what it looks like for the cutscene when you die. Yes, the flamethrower does do damage, but really you're just burning the flesh on it, and it doesn't seem like it does all that much, but I think it actually does. But whew, this fight is like the most stressful thing about 2020, pandemic included. My favorite game of 2020 was Final Fantasy VII Remake, and that was because it took the beginning portion of Final Fantasy VII and expanded upon it. And to do that, they had to take some common enemies and make them into bosses. So, like, the Hell House is now a full-on huge boss fight, but that's not the entry here. The entry is the Train Yard Spooktacular whenever you fight the ghoul, because there were ghouls in the train yard in the first one, but now it's a full-on boss fight, and done so in the most creative way possible. Because you're fighting this ghost, and it keeps switching into its like corporeal form and everything, so you can either hit it with magic, or you have to hit it with physical attacks, and you have to keep swapping, so it keeps you on your toes. You can either blast its ass with magic, with Aerith, or you can swap to Tifa or Cloud and just chop away and punch away at it. And it's playing this amazing music. It's swirling around the like furniture in the room, changing up the landscape. It can like auto kill some of your teammates, or at least it seems like it can. And it even has the cool Final Fantasy thing where you can use revive or cure on the thing to hurt it, because it is holy magic and it hurts it. The ghoul was by far my favorite boss fight in Final Fantasy VII Remake, because it really made you switch characters and kept you moving, so you didn't get like set in your ways. You never got into a like stale pacing during the fight. It was constantly moving, constantly evolving, and that is why this is our #1 boss fight of 2020. Because that is what a boss fight should be. It should never be stale. It should always be fresh and keep you going and make you feel like you earned this victory. And that is how we felt in Final Fantasy VII Remake. So that's our list. There were a lot of bosses in video games in 2020, so we didn't get to list all of them. This is only our, top 10. So we can't play all the games in the world, so let us know if there were some good boss fights that we missed in other games, because we would love to hear them. We're always looking for stuff to play, especially stuff with good bosses. But that being said, we're finally done with our past look at 2020 videos, so stay tuned for more Brotrio videos in the future.